Hey everybody, how y'all doing? Welcome to the Blue Chip Podcast by fans for fans. This is your host Cody Potter. How y'all doing? We're going to talk about the Broncos Commanders preview. Hopefully everybody had a happy Thanksgiving, good weekend with the family, everything like that. Safe travels, everything like that. Holiday season is upon us. Rivalry week in college football is upon us. Lots of fun, exciting football to scout. The draft boards are going to start getting cemented, at least in my case. I really pretty much locked mine in by the time the Senior Bowl is done. Texas beat Texas A&M. Marcel Reese kind of went out with the injury. Then he had 2 interceptions when he came back. Texas looked like that team that they came in with the preseason hype. Really good linebacker play. Michael Taft, really good walk-on safety. That he's been rock solid for them. Cornerback play has been really, really good with Muhammad and things like that. He's improved his stock. With Dallas and Philly moving backwards, Dallas moving up. Man, Dallas, Philly lost to the Bears last night. Then you had the Dallas win over the Chiefs. We got 2 teams moving in 2 different directions. The big trades Dallas made, they're looking to pay off. Quentin Williams is a hell of a football player, man. And then they also got Wilson from the Bengals. Sometimes these trades pay off, man. But a lot of times, as we saw with the Marshawn Lattimore trade, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I think a lot of that was schematic, and then Marshawn Lattimore got injured. I think if Dan Quinn was calling this defense, I think Marshawn Lattimore would have been a different player for us. It doesn't change the need for cornerback long term. They filled that need with Mikey Sammerstill and Trey Amos. I still think there's cornerback work to be done for this team, which is why I've looked at guys like Kelly Jones and things like that from Mississippi State, or even like a Tyreek Woolen, a cornerback out of UTSA that I really, really liked, that got drafted by Seattle, who will be a free agent. I think there's going to be a lot of movement. And a lot of additions on this defense by the time the draft and free agency are over. Looking at this Denver Broncos matchup, man, there's a lot of things to be excited about. Still some concerns and things that you want to see from this team. I'm not into tanking and anything like that. I don't believe in it. I believe that the future of this organization moving forward, the best thing that you could see is Jaden Daniels close out this season healthy. Make some improvements, things like that things that we've seen him have lapses in due to the injuries and everything that we've had on offense. It actually feels like week 1 for me, seeing Noah Brown, Terry McLaurin, and Jaden Daniels with Deebo Samuel and all them guys getting some work. Luke McCaffrey's hurt and things like that, but Jalen Lane, I would assume, will be back with a hip. Ben Sinnott missed last week. We'll want to see him start to get a couple reps and things like that. Maybe some manufactured touches just to give him some confidence going into this offseason, because I think Ben Sinnott is a versatile piece, man, but you got to be able to use him right. I do trust Cliff Kingsbury and things like that in being able to get him right long term. Sometimes tight ends just take time, and when you have Zach Ertz, you have the veteran, you have the safety outlet to Jaden Daniels, who's a young player. You lean on them veteran presences and things like that. So Ben Sinnott had a lot of work to do as a rookie in his own right with Jaden Daniels last year. He's really, really improved his blocking since coming into the league, so we're going to want to see some steps forward in that. Patrick Surtain will be back. Terry McLaurin's going to be active this week, so that's going to be a key matchup. Whether Terry McLaurin's very involved in the offense or whatever, Patrick Surtain does Patrick Surtain things, it still opens up things in the run game and things like that. The offensive line is something that's going to be critical in this game. The Denver Broncos are on pace to have one of those record seasons as far as sacks and the way that their defense is playing. So this is going to be a huge test for Josh Conerly Jr., man. I want to really see him continue the progress that he's built on the last 3 weeks as far as his numbers, as far as pressure ratings, sack ratings, hurry ratings, and things like that. I mean, you just see it on tape. He's improved his play over the course of the season. I know a lot of guys can, hindsight, we should have taken this guy, we should have taken that guy. But realistically, at 29, when you pick a Josh Conerly Jr., an athletic tackle who really only had a question of play strength at 21 years old, man, that's not the type of player you get at 29 usually in the draft. It doesn't have huge injury concerns and things like that, i.e. the Simmons pick that went to Kansas City this year, who has played really, really good, but the only reason he's available at pick 29, pick 30, and things like that is because he was injured and things like that. Josh Connerly Jr. didn't have any of them concerns. He's 21 years old. He's getting better every week. He's looked really, really good now against, Aiden Hutchinson and the guys that we've gone up against the last couple weeks. Looked good against Seattle as well. So, we got things we need to clean up. Marcus Mariota is going to lead the way. I would expect the running game to be another key focus on this for this team moving forward. Can we prevent the sacks, man? Can the offensive lines show that they are really the unit that we've prioritized them to be with all the free agent signings and the draft picks and all the trades that we've made to improve the offensive line in the trenches? I had expected to be focused on the other side of the ball this offseason as far as the defensive front, the linebacker position, and things like that, cleaning up safety position and things like that. Maybe you get a chance at a Caleb Downs if you continue to lose. Jaden Daniels coming back doesn't mean that we're going to start winning, but I would really, really like to see him come out and look better and be the player that we know him to be. I mean, Jaden Daniels is an exciting player. He can put on the cape and be Superman, but you want to see him protect himself. You want to see him run more plays where he's giving the ball to Debo and getting yards after the catch instead of Jaden Daniels just dropping back and maybe there is a guy open, maybe he sees him, maybe he's not even part of the progression, maybe he's not looking that way in the field, but you want to see Jaden Daniels start to hit these guys, trust his playmakers to make plays around him. When he starts to do that and these defenses have to back off on him and they can't just send that wave of edges coming around, a defender coming up the middle in a stunt and things like that, and just sending the pressure in waves with a spy behind it, where Jaden Daniels can't get away. Once he starts making the plays to his playmakers, like he was doing last year, and like I've seen him do in moments this year, we're going to get back to it. But having Terry McLaurin back, having a Noah Brown back, Noah Brown is a position that I expect this team to upgrade, whether it's in free agency, the draft, or both. I think if you have an opportunity to pick a Carnell Tate in this draft, he's the one. Right? It's pretty much Carnell Tate or bust for me with what I'm seeing. I do like a Chris Bell out of Louisville, the wide receiver out of Georgia. There's a Georgia wide receiver that I really, really like. I don't think he's getting any pub as far as first round play, but he's a burner over the top. He's explosive. I think by the time the draft comes around, I think he'll go a lot higher than maybe he's being talked about right now. Jordan Tyson. There's things with him. I like he's an elite route runner. He has elite level hands. He demonstrates it on tape. He does show you that he does have elite level hands, but I think he's more schematically drawn up, for getting involved in the game plan. I've seen Kelly Jones take him out of the game plan for a half of football, and then they had to take him away from Kelly Jones, and I think that's going to be something that he struggles with in the NFL early on in his career. As far as him, is he a top 10 pick? To me, I don't think he is. I think a lot of guys have him as a top 10 pick because of the years that he's stacked at Arizona State. I don't think he's the type of wide receiver that this team is looking for. Not to say he's not a great player or a great prospect and can't be, but for me, when I watch big games and I'm looking at critical matchups, he's always not. He tends to not be available. Last year we had that in Trey Harris, the wide receiver out of Ole Miss. And when I'm watching you in a critical matchup, in the bigger games, you're not available for it. Well, availability is something that you have to scout. And if you're not available for the biggest games of the season, late in the season and things like that, man, you're really no good for your team in the biggest moments, moving forward. To me, Carnell Tate is a guy that coming out of high school in Chicago, he's a guy that I really, really liked. Looking forward to this matchup, Carnell Tate's a guy that really, really fits, man. He is a NFL-ready wide receiver right now. The way he runs routes, I think he has sneaky speed. I don't think he's the most explosive speed guy, but the way he plays the sidelines, 2 feet in bounds, he doesn't, college football, you only need 1 foot in bounds, when he's making catches. He's high-pointing catches on the sideline, running them like an NFL wide receiver, his routes, his break points, the way that he sets it up. And he's getting 2 feet in bounds, man. He shows that he's NFL ready. It would be, if I was picking a wide receiver in the top 10 this year, it would be Carnell Tate. That's the guy. I do love Mekhi Lemon, but I feel like Mekhi Lemon is a blend of, all 3 receivers that this team has currently, as far as Deebo Samuel, Luke McCaffrey, and Jalen Lane. I feel like he's a blend of all 3 of those guys, and I just don't think that you can add another piece that looks like that. I think you need another piece that gives you something more like what Carnell Tate or Denzel Boston gives you, if you're picking a wide receiver that early. So for me, those are the two guys that I kind of look at, and I'm like, yeah. So for me, it would almost be like last year where, last year I'm looking at the draft. There was a lot of edge guys, but I like this edge class coming out this year a little bit better. Sometimes you got to put it off for a year. If it's not Carnell Tate or if it's not a Denzel Boston type, I look to 2027 when the draft will be in Washington anyway. You're looking at guys that I am really, really, you're going to have Jeremiah Smith go in the top 3. You're going to have Cam Coleman in that draft, the Auburn wide receiver, man, who is amazing in his own right. He's really came on this season. You have the Clemson wide receiver that I'm really, really, really high on. I mean, there's a ton of wide receivers. You got Mario Cravers, the burner for Texas A&M, who's been kind of banged up the last couple of weeks. He kind of reminds you of an Aaron Anderson from LSU this year, who will come out a little bit smaller guy, but super, super dynamically explosive. Cliff Kingsbury showed, with Elijah Moore and guys like that he likes that type of wide receiver, but I feel like we have that in Jalen Lane. I think Jalen Lane will develop into a guy that Cliff Kingsbury gets involved in this offense, but we need a true dynamic number 2. There's always going to be the Brandon Ayuk things as far as that until that, whatever happens with him transpires. The connection with Jaden Daniels, I think that's a guy that maybe you could look to sign in free agency, but I don't think he's a guy that you can trust. I think if you're looking at a Carnell Tate or in 2027, I think you might be making a pick at wide receiver at that point. This year, the linebacker class and things like that, you look at Denver and what they do at the linebacker position, the additions of Dre Greenlaw, then, the way that defensive front plays and the sacks and the way that they manufacture pressure and things like that with Vance Joseph and all the ways that they deploy guys. I think that's the way that Washington is going to want to use their scheme. They're going to want to upgrade their front. They're going to be more physical, man. I think next year, by the time you're looking at this team in training camp, the edges and the guys that they will add to this defense, the upgrades at linebacker play to pair with Frankie Louvu and Jordan McGee moving forward, because I think those are two pieces that we will have moving forward. I think this offensive front is the identity of this team right now. I think next year you're going to see the defensive front start to match that, and in training camp I think it's going to be iron sharpening iron, and we're going to have two fronts that are really, really physical. I think that's the identity the AP has always kind of stressed on. If you look at the San Francisco 49ers, all the first round picks, second round picks, the Solomon Thomases of the world, the Nick Bosa's of the world, I mean the Buckners of the world that they traded to Indy, and all, just every year they were constantly, whether it was trades, whether it was the draft, they were always upgrading their defensive front. You've seen it here so far with Adam Peters on the offensive front in the first 2 years. I think you're going to start to see that focus in the defensive front in the next couple years, and really, really set the identity of this defense and the offense to be up front in the trenches. I think that's going to be pivotal to the success of this team moving forward. Denver Broncos are probably going to get this game, but you want to see the improvements on the field. You want to see the health of this team. Now that you get the Drake Jackson back, you get the Will Harris back. Drake Jackson hasn't played it down for this team. He's a free agent addition that came over from San Francisco who had a major injury a couple years ago. You're going to finally see what he can bring to this team. Does that maybe even open up with Jerzon Newton and Deron Payne starting to look more effective? As you can tell, they're not picking. Nobody's picking Washington, as you shouldn't. I mean, the Denver Broncos defense is smothering, man. They're really, really relentless. I mean, they're on their way to the playoffs and things like that. They're probably going to be a top 2 seed in the AFC playoffs. So again, Washington, you're really looking for the youth of this team to start to improve some of the things that we've seen throughout the season, whether it's Mikey Sanders still getting a little bit more better in his nuances and playing more to the technique that we saw last year, Dan Quinn putting in more favorable positions. It would be really nice to have Trey Amos finish the season, but he's out on injured reserve. But the veteran D-backs that we have, man, having Will Harris come over, getting him back since week 3, we haven't had him kind of clean up the safety play that has been a little bit spotty, which is what I think has been a little bit of the communicational issues that we've seen on the back end of the defense as far as the big plays and things like that. I think Will Harris will start to clean some of that up. Deron Payne will be back for this game. So I expect this to be a more close to what we were expecting to see the identity of this team looked like coming into this year before all the injuries started to really, really pile up on this team and the major, missing time from the key players that were supposed to be pivotal players and, have pivotal roles on this team. So again, man, we're probably not. It's if we win the game, it'd be great. I would love to see this team come out and get a big win against this team, man. That would be huge for the confidence going forward. Then maybe you get Jaden Daniels back against the Vikings next week, who have, they have their own, defensive, studs on that defense, man. They're a really relentless defense, man. That would be a type of defense that you want to see Jaden Daniels come back, protect himself, stay healthy, move the offense efficiently with Terry McLaurin, hopefully stacking healthy after this game, him getting back up to speed, hopefully be more effective by the time that Jaden Daniels would be coming back. That's something that you'd want to see, because then you get to see the run game really, really be effective. You get to see Cliff Kingsbury be a little bit more, opportunistic with the way that he uses Bill. And then, Chris Rodriguez has really solidified himself as a guy that you can hand the ball to and get effective yards and kind of wear defenses down. We saw that last week. Can he build off of that? Because this will be the first time that he really gets the opportunity to build off of being that physical bowling ball up in the middle and, wear these defensive fronts down, with the offensive line play and the expectations that you have from them. This is what you kind of need to see from this team going forward. So again, this game is very, very important. It might not be it might not be a win in the win column. I'm not a guy that looks to tank for draft position. We're going to pick where we pick, and ultimately there's going to be a stud available. You have to identify the stud that's best for your team long term moving forward. Also, you have to look at the strength of the draft, and you have to say, okay, man, there's 3 linebackers here that I really, really like. Maybe 2 of those players will be available by our next pick, or maybe we have to move up to a pick to get one of them guys, but we can get a shot at this wide receiver, whether it's Carnell Tate or whether it's one of the defensive edges that they really, really love. You look at just maximizing each pick in this draft. So again, like I said, maybe you get a chance at Jeremiah Love or something that's, not necessarily the biggest need position, but it's a dynamic addition to the team. Those are the types of picks that you really, really have to make moving forward for this team. We need the best talent overall that we can add to this roster. As you can tell, it can't just be the Terry McLaurin, Jaden Daniels show moving forward. Terry McLaurin's 30 years old. You're going to have to start supplementing this roster with some other players and things like that. Deebo Samuel in his own right will be 30 years next year. So again, we're always focused on the draft, but you don't ever want to tank for the draft. You want to be effective. You want to see improvement at every position through the year. You want to see the draft picks that we've made in the last 2 years, because those are going to be pivotal players moving forward for this team. There was a lot of draft picks brought in on the Jaden Daniels class that you want to see start having, critical, pivotal roles on this team, like Jordan McGee has stepped up to show he can be. Like Brandon Coleman, when he's been on the field, he's been a reliable player, especially at left tackle. We've seen Mikey Sanders still be a really, really good player as a rookie. I expect him to be a really, really big football player, a really, really productive football player for this team moving forward, man. I think he has all the skill sets. He has the mental makeup that you need. I think systematically we had to do some things differently because he started covering tight ends, which would be more of our box safety responsibility, and I think teams started to pick on him in that. So we were grading him low, but realistically he was doing things that were, we have to do this out of necessity. This isn't what we want to do type things. And that's just what happens in football with injuries and things like that. But I expect this guy to be a hell of a football player moving forward. One of my favorite players on the whole team, because he's the mental that he brings to the work attitude, the things that I see on tape from him and his coverage ability, he's always really rock solid. And then he's a playmaker on top of that. He gets his hands on footballs. Honestly, if you told me at the end of Mikey Sanders-Still's career, if he plays his career out here, if he was one of our, if he was leading the league in interceptions as far as, by the time he joined the league to by the time he's getting out of the league, by the time it's all said and done, I think he's that type of player. He's a rock solid football player moving forward, but you want to see him build on, what he did last year, kind of improve on some of the lapses that we've seen so far this year now that we're putting him in a more favorable position, whether he's playing outside or playing inside. Jerzon Newton is a pick that we made at 36. That's almost a first round player, man. You want to see him start to have the impact and show that he can have his own right and his own systematical impact, whether in not just in the pass rushing department from the defensive tackle position with the addition of Kent Law, and then having Durant Payne. You want to see Jerzon Newton start to step up and it start to be a three-way rotation where you basically have three starters at that position. That's what this team needs from Jerzon Newton. That was the type of pick that you made him to be. That's the type of production we're going to start needing to see. But I think it will start to all click as this defense starts to get more of an identity moving forward. Once you start to get more better, more reliable players on the edge. Jacob Martin has showed that he can be an explosive athlete. He's a relentless motor football player. Dorrance Armstrong was giving you a similar role early in the season. You lost Javonte Jean-Baptiste after 2 games, with 2 sacks. The injuries just piled up for this defense. But again, you're going to look at this draft and you see the premier players at the defensive end position, the rush linebacker position, whether it's Arvell Reese, whether it's playing him at stand-up linebacker and then moving him around the front, putting him at edge rusher sometimes because of the dynamic ability that he has, or it's a Sonny Styles where it's more traditional linebacker and things like that. Trust me, there's guys in this class. Jacob Rodriguez is a stud and things like that. So, again, there's a lot of things that we're looking forward to the rivalry week as these guys start to play these key pivotal matchups in the SEC, the Big Ten, and all around the country. This is a big week of scouting for me, man. This is where it really, really gets big for me. You start to see these cornerback wide receiver matchups that start to separate your grades that you have so far through the season. Your notes you've accumulated over the season. This is where it really comes together, and you start to see, are they a true impact dynamic player? Are they a piece? Are they a third-round player that they have this skill set, you can use them this way, they match up your style systematically, and if you put him in this role, he can excel on your team. Maybe he doesn't fit another team, and that's why he's fallen to the 3rd round, things like that. This is where the draft board really starts to get locked in, and we start to see these pivotal matchups pay off, and then we had the playoffs and things like that. So, it's nothing but good football from here on out, guys. So, I'm really going to talk a lot more about college football when I do these breakdowns and do our look-aheads, because at the current juncture, the Commanders season is pretty much done. We're not making the playoffs. It would take winning out and Philly losing out, and a lot of things would have to happen for that to even be possible. It's just something you don't even think about right now. Right now, you're just trying to see good play, get a win, and then stack wins and things like that. Show that you can handle the adversity that you had early in the season, then you can change the narrative for your season in the season. Will that help you next year? No, because it's its own entity. Injuries and things like that will dictate next year and all that too. Moving forward, but getting this roster younger, having the younger players play on this roster, that's going to be pivotal going forward. So again, I appreciate you guys sticking around for the pod. This is my Denver Commanders matchup for Sunday Night Football. We're going to be rocking the Super Bowl era jerseys. Hopefully we can be a lot more healthy and a lot more pivotal, not lose a key player and things like that like we did last time. And like I said, man, have a blessed week, man. Enjoy this rivalry week for college football, and then have a blessed week, and hopefully your team gets a win, and hopefully you're happy at the end of the week, and hopefully Thanksgiving was great for you guys. Peace.